ever started a painting and then had to stop? Wondering what to do next? How do you re-wet? That's the question that Diana has asked this morning on my channel. She says, I've started a landscape and had to stop. Question, can I re-wet the larger areas? Welcome, accomplices. I'm Lynda Norman. I'm a watercolor artist in British Columbia. Today we're going to explore how to re-wet a painting that has dried over some time. So, Diana, I don't know what the subject is of the painting that you're working on, but I have several of those paintings that have been sitting with a couple of layers or one layer of paint, and then I've had to step away and haven't got back to them while they were still wet, because I do like to paint wet on wet most of the time. So, without knowing what you're adding to your painting, I will approach this as how I would continue on with one of my landscapes. I think, first of all, I want to look at what I have here. I like my sky. I like how that's dried. I like how that's sort of set off kilter a little bit. This could be a cloud, but you know what? It could also be a nice bank of trees. I often do those kinds of landscapes where, where the water kind of meanders through. So I'm going to take a look at that. The thing to remember when a painting is dry and you're going to be adding water is that the water will leave an edge. A bloom, perhaps, if you add pigment to that water. So you're going to have to be very gentle and very careful with how you do this. Now, if I was going to add, perhaps, this is a dry brush, I'm just sort of playing and laying some ideas out before I wet everything and then start moving things around. Because I don't necessarily want this to move, but I will re-wet this large area here to create some shorelines and some water. So, with that in mind, I'm going to re-wet with my brush. I would not really want to re-wet with a spray bottle, just because I feel, for me, it doesn't give me the control that I want when I'm applying the water to the surface. This is on 100% cotton paper, as always. This would be, it looks to me, it's like it's been a while since I've dealt with this one, but I would guess it's an Arche 140 pound. It looks like that to me. After a while, you get to sort of know what the surface of the papers look like. So I'm going to re-wet sort of in the areas of where I want to add pigment. And so if I'm making a little bit of land, a shape here coming in to there, you can see already where that water is creating an edge against what was there as the dry paint. So what I want to do is get in there with, I think I'm just going to switch to a smaller brush, because I want to be a little more specific where I'm putting my pigment. This is the 3-line solo brush. I put the wet water on with the 5-line solo brush. Those I get from Michael Solovyev's Watercolor Online Studio. I'm just letting that water sit for a minute because I do want to see where it's going to travel. And depending on the paper that you're using and what you've got on your surface already, that could look different. And I just want to check. I'm not adding enough water so that it's flowing out. I don't want to puddle. I just want moisture there so that when I apply my pigment, it does have a bit of movement without leaving too many harsh edges. And I can tell from this, it's my typical Mayan dark blue in my sky. So I'm going to continue on with that, I think, for the basis of my mountains. But because it's going to be a bit thicker, it's going to give some dimension. So I can go ahead on top of that bit where I laid the water. I wouldn't want to leave water where I wasn't going to add more pigment and shapes. Okay, so sort of just filling that in. I can work in this area now that I've got some pigment in there, and I've brought it up into the dry area on the page. I don't very often paint wet on dry, but this is a lovely example of how that can work with the different brushes, and it's kind of fun to look at the textures. I love that there's you know, with just the edge of my brush, I can create these sort of spiky little treetops coming up. And so that's one way to treat adding some moisture to your page. Okay, so I'm going to leave that area there. We can come back to that and fix some definition and do some things there later, but that gives you an idea of how that can happen. The other thing is, if you're going to be creating a large area, so I think with that I would go back to my larger brush, and I will re-wet this whole bottom area where the reflection of the light source is coming down into, and I'm guessing this is going to end up being water. I don't see that kind of reflection would really indicate much of a land formation. So I'm going to just a light application. I can re-wet. It's not moving this underpainting. It's just on the surface, and it's going to soak in, but I'm going to let it soak in without manipulating it with my brush. I'm going to let that, I'll just allow that to happen. And if I wanted to make a horizon line, I could certainly do that. Okay. Now, because I have wet this area below where I've added the pigment there, the pigment is going to fall down through that, sort of diffusing down into that layer of water at the bottom. And because I'm not adding puddles, I can leave it like that. I can add more color now, and I think I'm going to try my other palette. Oh, I moved that too far away. I'm just going to try a different color blue. Just going into my Indanthrone blue. It's a brighter blue, and I want that to maybe show a bit more of a difference of where this water is going to be in my design. So I can add colors. I've re-wetted that page. It's going to be a little bit different. If I had pardon me, if I'd added the blue while I had the wet Quinacridone gold, that's this color in here, at the first layer, they would react a little bit differently. But you can see, because I add the water all the way across, it's still diffusing, and it's blending quite nicely. So it's very doable. Just, you need to be aware. You need to watch. If it's a really large area, you have to sort of have eyes in the back of your head, so to speak, just to keep an eye on where things are moving, because as we know, where the water is, there will be movement. And I'm just going to bring that across just for a bit of, and I'm lightly going over the gold. It's going to come through, it's going to show through. And then back into the Mayan dark blue for some shore line effects. And then I think this side possibly would be down here, just to show that it's not quite level with that one. A little bit further, or a little closer, I should say. And then we have that sort of difference there. Now, even though I didn't add a lot of water, The surface is buckling a little bit. I taped this down to a piece of Coroplast. It wasn't, you know, if it was on a block, it would be different. It might not have buckled quite so much. But even with that little bit of water added, it does buckle. And so my challenge always is to keep that horizontal line. And I love these brushes because, pardon me, they can, you know, they come to a nice point like that, and I can create a line. And hopefully that line is, even with the buckling, is fairly straight. And if it's not, I can go in once it's dry and I can adjust that. But you can see where you're, you know, adding more water, adding more pigment usually isn't a problem, as long as you're adding pigment to it. I wouldn't want to just add water unless you were very skillfully able to, you know, maneuver that so that it works well with your design. But any place that you're adding pigment, will, it's just like going back to your original painting, wet on wet, right? I love that this, these little tree shapes in the back have become kind of misty and look a little bit more in the distance. And as these dry here, they will do the same. And you can add more colors. You know, my usual Undersea green, give us a little bit of color for the body of that little forested area, a little bit here too. Your paints will still flow out into the wet areas, as you can see there, and I will turn those into shadows and tree shapes in the water. And I'm just dabbing some water here on the edge of this landmass and up into the colors a tiny bit, and then I'm just going to tip it slightly for just or not slightly, quite a bit actually, and encourage that to flow down. Now you can see here where I added quite a bit of water and how I'm getting that bloom. So this is where I say you've got to keep your eyes, you know, peeled all the time. What do they say? Keep your head on a swivel. You've got to be paying attention. So I'm going to, with the lightest touch and with the brush almost dry, like I'm just taking out any excess moisture. And I don't want to touch where these bits of color have fallen down, because I love how that's happened in that water that I applied there. And that was an example of adding more water rather than just a light touch. But where it's blossomed and bloomed, I'm going to feather that through with the lightest touch. Once a blossom has dried and you get that hard edge around it, it's a little more difficult. You have to work away at it. And if you're not using, you know, really strong 100% cotton paper, that can become an issue. Even some of the 100% cotton papers will only tolerate so much scrubbing. So you want to be aware and careful. I love that. Oh, I think I might take that off because it's I don't hang my brushes up, and it's always dangling in the way. There we go. So I can use it as my pointer. So I love that this color has diffused into the moisture on the page. Again, this side I didn't add a ton of water, whereas here I did, and I got a really beautiful effect where the pigment is coming through and the water actually pushed away the pigment that was there that I added with the indanthrone blue sort of on the new layer, and it kind of pushed that away. So I'm quite pleased with how that's working out. I like that this is sort of diffusing. Still not happy with that horizon, but again, that is something I probably will resort to getting a ruler out once it's dry and defining that a little bit more with one of those little chisel brushes that I talk about with the nice sharp edge, so then I can just go along and sort of create that edge more straight when it's time. And I think I would just go back in now with a nice pointed brush. This is my Levinson workhorse and I'm just going to create a couple of tree shapes on the edge of this this little bit of land. And trees are, you know, they're not perfect, so I like that some of them are kind of wonky and a little crooked. Some are fat, some are thin, and I'm going to leave those now there. And like I say, I can continue on with this painting now. It's a bit wet at the moment for me to be going in and chiseling any shorelines. I like to let things be a little more dry before I start lifting anything out. If the painting, the moisture that you've added is still very present, when you try to lift out any color, that moisture will just sort of fall into that space again, so you're kind of fighting a losing battle. So I like to wait until the paint is, the pigments are dry enough that they're not going to move around a whole lot. Again, I'm not adding a lot of water when I go in with these little brushes, but enough to just pull out that pigment. So I want to make sure that that's at a good level of dryness. And this area here, it looks to me like it's a bit, I don't know, it's kind of like a slope, a little bit of a slope there. So I'm going to just touch a tiny bit of the Quinacridone gold, as I very often do, and just another touch of some blue, Mayan dark blue, and I'm going to let that sit for a moment. I love that this is now, it's forming its own shoreline again because of that moisture on the page. I'm going to continue to watch. This is lovely. This has the potential to be a cauliflower, a bloom, and so I want to make sure that that edge is kept from doing that. I'm just going to add, I like that there's a bit of potential here for some rocks, and I'm just going to make that slope look like it's got some rocks and things, some boulders. Make it a little rugged looking. And then, whoops, here where I had mentioned where it looks like there may be a cauliflower happening, it's the pigment was pretty heavy in that moisture that was there, and so it's not diffusing to nothing. It's kind of coming to an end where the water ends and sitting there. So I could use that to my advantage, and once I carve out that little edge, I can define that even more. But again, with a almost dry, it's been cleaned. I can feel that it's damp because it feels cool on my skin, but it's not dripping water. You can't really tell that there's water. And I just want to, while this pigment on these edges is still on the damp side, I just want to soften that edge. The lightest touch. I think I've mentioned this before. I don't really want to pull it down. I want to let the water and the pigment do their own movement there with the gravity. But I'm just going to pull these pigments out into the water area. You can see where the water is trying to make a bloom. I'm adding just a tiny bit more water to my brush to clean it. Just enough that I can continue to move these edges. And we're going to make this blend right in to the rest of that moist water, the lake. Lightest of touches, pardon me, and horizontal lines. Don't want to be doing this or this. We'll let the lines sort of flow on their own. If I find, you know, and a lot of the way I paint is just kind of going with the flow and letting the paint dictate what has to happen next. So this is, you know, it's quite a beautiful green that's coming through, but I can also go back and pull that back a tiny bit and keeping that moisture from pooling on that surface. Lightest touch, blend that through. You don't want to be scrubbing hard on your page. I'm barely touching the surface. And we're just letting those colors blend. If I felt that I needed more of that greenish tone, I could always, probably what I would do is just touch my painting at some point and pick up just enough of the same colors that I've got going on there. And I could bring a bit more of that greenish tone just to another small area of the painting. Bring in that that tone a tiny bit, just so it doesn't look too out of place. But for the way I paint, it's quite doable. You know, adding more moisture, you just need to be a little more careful and aware of what's happening on your page. I will go through as we see things dry, and I will put some finishing touches. We'll put a picture of that, a photo of that at the end of the video so you can see sort of where that's at. But I hope this has been helpful to show you that yes, you can add more water to a dried painted surface. If you have to stop your painting and come back later, just as you become more aware of your relationship with your pigments and your water and the tools that you have at your disposal, those kind of things will become more and more easy for you to do. And if you do happen to run into a situation where you have a little bit of an issue, a bloom or something that doesn't make you really happy, there are ways to correct that. And as I say, once you've come to that level with your materials, that becomes easier as well. So thank you for joining me today. If you like what you've seen, please subscribe to my channel or visit my website, bandrystudio.com. That's BANDRAOI studio.com. Or head on over to our membership area. We'll have some fun things happening there soon.